Bitter criticism. Die episode. Day edition. We're finally day edition. We're just reading news. Today we're gonna read news from. To tell you the truth, I don't know if this is gonna happen. Let's see. We are going to read some Russia Today news. Yes. Hello, baby. Look at the camera. Look. Do you know my babies? Look. This is Mercy. Because he looks like a bat. He's a bat woman. And this is Milou. Milou just like Tintin, and I am Tintin, as you can see, as you can understand the situation here. I am Tintin, and there's Milou. Questions? Any other question? So we are gonna read some Russia Today news today. All this news I got from the first page from Russia Today. They are highlights. This is from March 27, and this it says like German tanks arrive in Ukraine. This was a news for me because I saw these tanks had already go to Ukraine. I don't know, 1 month ago, but they just arrived in Ukraine, and you will see what the Russians are saying about this. German tanks arrive in Ukraine. Spiegel. Ukrainian soldiers were given a crash course on operating the Leopard 2 tanks before 18 of them were handed over. Handed over. Like handed over will be a giveaway. They given the tanks away. The Ukrainian military has received 18 Leopards 2 main battle tanks from Germany. Der Spiegel reported on Monday. Kiev has already taken delivery of Leopards from Poland, but Western analysts say it will need several times more than that amount in order to make an impact on the battlefield. I guess the camera is a little no, it's fine, isn't it? Well, the camera is fine. The tanks left Germany last week and were handed over at an undisclosed location along Ukraine's border. The magazine reported, citing anonymous sources. Of course, this is the Pentagon, you know. This is the FBI. While the exact location of the handover was not made clear, most Western supplied weapons to date have entered Ukraine via Poland. After months of hesitation, the German government announced in January that it will send the Leopards to Ukraine and will authorize other European countries to donate the Germany-made tanks from their own armories. In the time since Ukrainian tanks crews have received around 2 months of training on the leopards, with German instructors giving them a condensed version of the Bundeswehr's normal training course. I will read news about the future of Europe then, or coming. Poland has already donated 14 Leopards 2 tanks to Ukraine. Leopard 2. This is called Leopard 2 tanks. Well, because there was a Leopard 1. To Ukraine after giving the crews an even shorter training period of 5 weeks. Meanwhile, the US intends to supply Kiev's forces with M1 Abrams tanks in the end of 2023, while Britain is currently training Ukrainian soldiers to operate its Challenger 2 battle tanks ahead of their planned delivery in the coming weeks. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky stated in January that his military needs as many as 500 Western-built tanks to turn back Russia's forces. An assessment that Western analysts concur with. Franz Stefan Gadi, a researcher at the London-based International Study Institute for Strategic Studies, wrote in January that Ukraine must field at least one armored brigade consisting of up to 100 Leopard 2s to have a significant impact on the conflict. And Poland donated 14 and they need, well, 100. I guess if Russia don't have javelins, because as I know, the javelins was the hell for Russian tanks. Javelins are a bazooka, like a missile, intelligent missile. That was the best weapon for Ukraine against our motherland, Russia. I'm supporting Russia. I'm sorry. Even were Ukraine to succeed in field, an entire armored brigade or more, Gadi continued, Moscow's forces will be likely to adapt, eventually diminishing its power. According to Der Spiegel, the Ukrainians were given an extensive package of weapons and spare parts along with the tanks. Berlin has identified the complex maintenance of the Leopard 2 as a potential challenge for Ukraine and is reportedly seeking to set up a maintenance hub in a neighboring country. Poland volunteered earlier this month to build such a facility. Moscow has said that the Leopards will burn Woo! In Ukraine, like the rest of Kiev's Western supplied weapons. The West continues. What I know is that Brazil denies the petition, the order of munition. NATO asked Brazil for munition, and Brazil denies. Moscow has said that the Leopards will burn in Ukraine like the rest of Kiev. The West continue with efforts to arm Ukraine will only prolong the conflict without changing its outcome, the Kremlin has stated. Well, this is more war, isn't it? More war. This is exactly the news I want to read now. This is related to what happened with to this European effort against Russia, isn't it? The EU is losing relevance in the emerging new world. Russia and China are shaping global politics while the US dominates its partner across the Atlantic, leaving European countries as mere passengers. By Timur Fomenko, a political analyst. This is gonna be a long article, I guess, but this is interesting. Here we have the Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin together having a blast in Russia, I guess. Taking some drinks. What a night! I don't know. I'm very sympathetic to China, Russia. I'm sorry. I will make a jersey for me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, everything. I'm sorry. Meeting of Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping in Moscow last week was met with predictable accusation in Western circles that Moscow has becoming subservient or even a vassal of Beijing. What? I thought it would be the contrary. Well, like he's writing right here, it's like China is worse than Russia. Look, I will read again. Last week was met with predictable accusation in Western circles that Moscow has becoming subservient or even a vassal of Beijing. Understand? So, is Russia controlled by China on this invasion and on this special operation in Ukraine? Well, I guess I went too far, isn't it? But is what is right there. I don't know. MEP Guy Verhofstadt, fantasist and former Prime Minister of Belgium, jeered on Twitter. Putin's jeered on Twitter. I don't know what this jeered. I'm sorry. Putin's appalling legacy now includes turning Russia more and more into a Chinese vassal state, oblivious to the irony of his own words. As the United States took the lead in denouncing China's peace plan for the Ukraine conflict, publicly setting out the conditions on which it should end, the European Union was nowhere to be seen, or at least had nothing original to say. This makes Verhofstadt's comments, and this Verhofstadt should be from the Netherlands, isn't it? Fair is with V. Verhofstadt comment at damning display of lacking self-awareness. Russia and China are setting out their vision of a new multipolar world, while the US struggles against them in seeking to maintain its hegemonic position. Meanwhile, the European Union has been reduced to the status of a mere bench player in it all, and has become effectively irrelevant. The failure of EU countries to stake out their own will and position amidst the larger powers, as well as their total subservience to the US, has made a mockery of the strategic autonomy concept of once championed by Emmanuel Macron. Strategic autonomy. I don't have no idea about that. And here we have a whole article about strategic autonomy, but I will read it later. It is a principle of European integration where the UN should be an actor in a multipolar world, which advocates for its own interests and pursues its own agenda. Supporters of this principle insist that the EU should not blindly follow the will of the US when it comes to every foreign policy issue, but should be proactive and enhance its role on the world stage. Therefore, they should not, as is commonly demanded by Washington, take sides on matters such as a new Cold War with China. I'm impressed because This article is talking about the problem again with China, not Russia. Anyway, the term gained growing attraction during the years of the Trump administration when Europe's relations with the US hit a low due to his particular interpretation of the America First doctrine. However, and here we have a picture of Biden downplays Russia-China ties. Biden, anyway. However, the practical reality of strategic autonomy is that the EU is not a unitary state, but a loose intergovernmental organization of states which, while seeking to establish common positions on a principle of unity, do not truly have a unified foreign policy making mechanism. The intra-institutional politics of the EU are often a messy compromise and battle of wills between different levels of actors, including the states themselves, the European Commission, and the European Parliament. This combines with the reality that European integration has been a broken process since 2008, since the global crisis, I guess. Of course, challenges such as the Eurozone financial crisis, Brexit, COVID-19, and internal conflicts with various states such as Poland have all weakened and fractured the EU. As a result, the EU has been ill-suited to deal with what is, despite media misdirection, the single most explicit source of foreign influence and interference against it, the US. Washington has multiple channels whereby it exerts control over the EU's many foreign policy actors. Firstly, it uses a web of government-funded think tanks and associated journalists to control public opinion and steer EU countries towards supporting its objectives. Secondly, this is so true because the media, these think tanks, controls the media, isn't it? So anything you will see on media, Western media, I guess, is manipulated. Maybe Russia Today is manipulated too, but it is all manipulation. You know, you can trust anybody. You have to read Russia Today too. You know. Secondly, the US has an extraordinarily political hold over the former Soviet bloc states to the east of the EU, with the exception of Hungary, which it uses to foment increased antagonism against China and Russia and China, and therefore undermines the attempts to the bloc's most autonomous and powerful states, Germany and France, to pursue more reconciliatory foreign policies. Thirdly, the US uses the United Kingdom as its primary cheerleader in Europe. This was funny because imagine a cheerleader, isn't it? I guess it's funny. Be it from within or without the EU. Well, you know what I think about England and the US is that they are the same people. You know, I forgot now, but it's pretty logical. They have a common view, because they have a common past. They come same. The same genetics, you know, they are the same people. They are like one people. I forgot his alliance, but it's Canada, United States, England, and Australia. I don't remember, but see, Russia today is exaggerating the things, because it's logic. It's not England is not a cheerleader. Is the same people. There's no drama with that, I guess, or is completely understandable. And the U.S. Thirdly, the U.S. uses the United Kingdom as its primary cheerleader in Europe, be it from within or without the EU, to project its political will onto the continent and override the will or any defiant member states. An example of this is the BBC World Service acting as a massive propaganda machine to push narratives in line with Washington's foreign policies. Additionally, the US has shown an ability to work with and weaponize the intelligence services of member states against their own countries, such as using Danish intelligence to spy on the other European leaders. I guess I knew something about that. And this is a news from this. Well, this guy, this journalist is, I don't know, he's too aggressive, I guess. On to bitter criticism. You are too aggressive. Look, we will have the sunset here. Look. Anytime soon, there will be tomorrow. Yeah. I will be here. Look. I don't know if you can see the sun. Yeah. It will be all about sunset, but today the sunset will be cloudy. It will be behind the clouds, so we will have the sunset earlier. Well, all this paragraph is, I guess, he should not to public, not public it. I don't know. Because it's too, I mean, all this is obvious, and they just don't care. Why be uses United Kingdom as a primary cheerleader in Europe, be it from within or without the EU? Because the EU is composed by a lot of other people that are not English, Anglosphere. So BBC is a world service acting a massive propaganda, just like Russia today. Anyway, this paragraph is not so good. Additionally, through all these factors, both past and present, the US has been able to keep Europe divided, conflicted, and seemingly unable to pursue any foreign policy which actually meets European interests, as opposed to those of the US. This has culminated even to the extent of literally destroying the Nord Stream pipelines and then propagating a false narrative that Ukraine was responsible. The Ukraine war has ultimately only accelerated the isolation and irrelevance of Europe, which has strengthened the whole of the military-industrial complex over the continent, undermined its energy industries, and thus converted the term strategic autonomy into a laughing stock. One might ask, who is truly the vassal if a new multipolar world is emerging, it's fair to say Europe simply isn't part of it. Russia, China, and America are the drivers of current events. The EU is but a passenger. Well, there's a lot of hate from Timur Fomenko, but and the ironic thing is I don't know what to do with my life. I like Europe. I guess what I like about Europe is that Europe have the best indexes, the best social indexes, I guess, and that's fine. I guess I have no interest in, I don't know, to live in the most violent, the most powerful and violent country in the world, like the United States. You know, the United States, the most powerful and violent empire in history, and people die from hunger, or I don't know, they don't eat well, you know, they have bad nutrition and a lot of problems, you know. Or China, the most powerful empire in history, slavery empire, you know. I don't know, at least for the human experience, neither the US nor China or Russia, they are not good. They are not fine. And just like that, when another day is passed, but the sun is still there behind the clouds, you know. And I don't know, we have another news, and I don't know, this guy was I'm not saying that Europe is a global power or anything, but they do have the best human experience. I don't know, you know, they have the shorter labor day, you know. They work less, they earn more. What more you want to have? Military power? I don't know. Well, I will read this another news from Russia Today from Bradley Blankenship. I'm an American journalist, columnist, and political commentator that has syndicated column at CGTN and is a freelance reporter for international news agencies, including Xinhua News Agency. I like the CGTN, the Chinese TV. I like this channel. Global South, there are a lot of Chinese women talking on English and talking perfectly. They are impressive. Global South solidarity is the key to lifting up Central America, not Washington's Monroe Doctrine. The US is angry at Latin America nations getting close to China, but the only alternative on offer is imperialist exploitation. I like it. Bradley Blankenship, an American journalist. Honduran President Xiomara Castro caused it and stirred in the media when, on March 14, she remarked that she had instructed her foreign minister to establish diplomatic ties with China. I'm not seeing where this news is going on, because he's talking about, you know. Excuse me, babies. This was met with strong approval in Beijing, while Honduran Foreign Minister Enrique Reina reiterated that his nation is seeking all the mechanisms that the international relationship serves for the interests of the people, and that his nation must cooperate with the largest nation in the world, which is Russia, I guess, or China, I don't know. And here we have a picture from El Salvador capital. A demonstrator runs at the United States flag, goes up in flames, symbolizing U.S. baked militarism during the massacre of students in 1975. But of course, the move was met with disgust in Washington, which, through its dated Monroe Doctrine, that places the Western Hemisphere firmly in the U.S. sphere of influence, sees itself as the overlord of Latin America. For example, U.S. Senator Bill Cassidy said on Twitter that Honduras has moving closer to China while the world is moving away, and that the Honduran people will suffer because of Castro's failed leadership. What? I'm not liking this this writer. I'm not liking this journalist. To be fair, the US sure knows a thing or two about the suffering of Honduras and the Central Americans, looking them and their children in cages as they flee the institution of the US. Washington has also orchestrated numerous coups that have devastated the region, and at the same time, China has a record of helping Central American nations, including Nicaragua, which recently re-established ties with Beijing. In February, China and Nicaragua agreed to step up their negotiations on a mutually beneficial free trade agreement and to advance the development of bilateral ties. To get a sense of this importance, I spoke to acclaimed American journalist Benjamin Norton at that time, who lives in Nicaragua and has been extensively covering China-Nicaragua ties. Why this American acclaimed journalist lives in Nicaragua? Maybe Nicaragua is awesome, isn't it? I know some Chilean that lives in Norway, and she loves Nicaragua. I don't know why. Maybe I go to Nicaragua someday. I know some Nicaragua women, and they are awesome. They are very nice indeed. He told me that the trade negotiations between Nicaragua and China are an important step in the deepening of South-South cooperation and the construction of a multipolar world. According to Norton, historically, the United States has treated Latin America in general and Central America in particular, as its colonial property. The U.S. militarily occupied Nicaragua 3 times and for decades propped up a brutal right-wing military dictatorship which imposed austerity on its population and sent all exports to the US for pennies and on the dollar. Just like any other global South country, I guess. Norton noted that in 2018 the US again sponsored a violent coup attempt against Nicaragua's democratically elected Sandinista government. When he push failed, When the putsch failed, Washington responded with economic warfare, imposing several rounds of aggressive unilateral sanctions, such as the devastating NECA Act, while pushing for a financial blockade. He noted that these sanctions are illegal under international law and have no significant damage to the Nicaraguan economy, hurting working-class Nicaraguans. At the same time, while the US is sanctioning Nicaragua, Washington still expects the Central American nation to export its products to the US, particularly beef and other foods. By negotiating new trade arrangements with China, Nicaragua can defend its economic sovereignty while strengthening South-South solidarity. For the whole Central American region, deeper trade relations with China can help by forming mutually beneficial economic partnership with China instead of sending all of its exports to the United States. Central America can advance down the path toward true independence and sovereignty, Norton said. I really don't like it how this guy writes, but I don't know, I guess I don't care about Central America. I never thought about it. but there are people who likes Nicaragua. I know some people. This is of particular relevance because the US government, and particularly the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, is obsessed with the issue of undocumented immigrants. A majority of these people are coming to the US from places like Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, all the formerly under US imperial rule at some point, and still to this day victimized by North American imperialism. There is also a significant amount of people fleeing Cuba and Venezuela, the former of which has been under a decades-long embargo, and the latter under extraordinarily brutal unilateral sanctions from Washington. This is the sentence, the best sentence I've read today. The embargo is the problem. While Republicans paint these people as violent criminals, they are in fact the victims of extreme exploitation and deliberate underdevelopment. If the US doesn't want people to seek asylum in their country, or otherwise illegally enter to seek better jobs opportunities, they had best and their imperialist practices in Latin America. They had best and their imperialist practices in Latin America. China's trade relations in the region, particularly Central America, could actually help ameliorate the antecedent causes of Washington's immigration problem. Of course, US officials are clamoring to undo China's activity in their hemisphere and have put together a series of offers to these countries that are nowhere near as lucrative as the opportunities China presents. Beijing's trade opportunities and South-South solidarity as a principle might just be the key to turning around the fortunes of Latin America and Central America in particular. This is particular dramatic for me because I live in Chile and today in the train, in the metro, in the subway, there was this guy. He was asking for money, and I guess asking for money in Chile is too hard. It was not the only one, but this guy say something about the afterlife. Say something about that he wants to die, something like that. A very sad region, if you ask me. And we have 5 minutes more, and this is interest news, also by Russia Today, that says World Bank predicts last decade overlapping crisis could lead to a sharp slowdown. The institution warns average potential global economic growth will slump to a three-decade low of 2.2% per year through 2030. The World Bank warned on Monday, citing the fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic, the conflict in Ukraine, and the ongoing risks to the financial sector in the US and EU. According to the report, all these factors are waging on a global economy, which the bank expects to expand by just 1.7% this year. A last decade could be in the making for the global economy, the World Bank's chief economist Indermit Gill said. The ongoing decline in potential growth has serious implications for the world's ability to tackle an expanding array of challenges unique to our times. Stubborn poverty, diverging incomes, and climate change. World Bank analysts warn that things could get worse, with steeper declines in potential growth if a global financial crisis of recession occurs. The slowdown we are describing could be much sharper if another global financial crisis erupts, especially if that crisis is accompanied by a global recession. The director of the World Bank's forecasting group, Jan Koz, was quoted by Reuters as saying, "The Washington-based institution predicts that low investment will also slow growth in developing economies, with their average GDP growth dropping to 4% to the rest of the 2020s, from 5% in 2021 and 6% from 2000s to 2010. Productivity is likely to grow as its lowest pace since the 2000s. The report said, nothing that investment growth in 2022-24 will be half the rate seen in the last 20 years. Global trade is growing at a much lower rate, it added. The World Bank urged policymakers to prioritize taming inflation, ensuring financial sector stability, and reducing debt, saying that potential growth could then reach as high as 2.9%. So bad news for everybody. Bad news for everybody, yeah. And we have 4 minutes. 4 minutes to read Washington's chronic disinterest in conflict exit strategies doesn't bode well for Ukraine. In Washington's chronic disinterest in conflict exit strategies doesn't bode well for Ukraine. This is like a threat for Ukraine. I don't know. At least 5 killed in latest U.S. school shooting. Sorry because of the laughing, but the suspect is reportedly dead after being confronted by the police in Nashville, Tennessee. Can you see it? Well, the US decides everything about the future and about the world, but the kids are killing each other in the schools for a long time. And is this the best country in the world? It's worse to live in a country that decides everything, and the kids are killing each other with guns. Support for Ukraine warning EU member president. Slovakia's Zuzana Koputova says military aid for Kiev is not unlimited and warns of waking public result. Of course, yeah. Slovakia is not Luka Doncic's countries, isn't it? Russian diesel exports surge despite EU ban. This news is interesting. Look, Turkey, Morocco, Brazil, and even top oil exporter Saudi Arabia have boosted imports of fuel, according to the outlet. I like energy news because energy is economy, and economy is everything, you know. So we are here just expecting the dogs the dogs just want to go. They don't care about news anymore. So that's it. We are just waiting for tonight, when you can be with my heart, waiting for tonight. It's not like that. Sexy times, yeah.